Thank you so much, Esteban. I'm going to go ahead and bring up our panelists as well to join me here on the stage. So first up, we have Alexis Nikole Nelson. Yes, that's right. Yes. We're all standing for you. So Alexis Nikole is a forager and outdoor educator, using her platform to yell, sing, and celebrate all the edible plants hiding in plain sight. I, like many of you, and plus or minus 7 million other people.
Casual
7 million people.
Not
all
stressful
follow her,
at all.
Yes, on social media, bringing so much joy to our algorithms. So thank you for being here, Alexis. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank
Yes.
you, Rachel.
Up next, we have Jeff Hermann, who has been producing children's media for his entire career. And he is the producer of DreamWorks Animation's critically acclaimed film, The Wild Robot. And before we came out here, everyone on the panel was having literally like a cry count off to see who cried the most times in The Wild Robot. And I think I took it with 4 choke sobs. So, Jeff, we're really happy to have you here.
For having us.
Yes. Next up, we have Billy Almon, who is an Astrobiofuturist. Talk about a cool job title. So Billy uses nature's hidden wonders to design innovative solutions for Earth and beyond. And the first time we got on a call, you led me down a rabbit hole around public buses that used biomimicry to be shaped like amoebas or something along those lines. Yes. So I think we have some really fun rabbit holes in store for us today.
Greetings, people of Earth.
Yes, fantastic. And finally, we have Sacha Spector, who is the director for the environment at the Doris Duke Foundation. Yes, yes, where he oversees all of the foundation's grant making on climate change, land conservation and stewardship, and inclusive conservation. And you did your PhD in using satellites to monitor dung beetle populations. Is that right? So this is going to be a wild conversation from these fantastic people up here. So let's get into it. This is going to be kind of part panel, but kind of part participatory exercise. So before we jump in, I'm actually going to invite everyone, including our fantastic panelists here, to do a little casual world building with me, okay? So go ahead, and if you feel comfortable, I'm going to invite everyone to close your eyes. Or you can find a point of soft focus in front of you. And go ahead and feel your feet on the floor. We're just going to take a couple breaths together, all right? So in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And I want us all to go ahead and picture a place, a location that is personally important to us, somewhere that we love. And now I want us to imagine that we're climbing into a little time machine in this place. And we're clicking the button for 120 years in the future. And our time machine travels, and we land, and we open the door, and the door opens into a place that is centering nature in this same location. So I want to ask you, what does this place look like in a thriving, nature-centered future? What sorts of things can you see? What sorts of things can you hear? What does it smell like? Who lives here? What creatures live here? I want you to look around yourself and think about what systems support this place, and how people interact with each other and the environment in this place. And when you've kind of got a sense of what this place could possibly look like in this nature-centered, regenerative future, I want you to take another breath, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and go ahead and open your eyes. All right, we're all here. We're all here. And those futures are possible. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they are possible, how they are both ambitious and probable, as you say, right? So Sacha, I'm going to start with you, because you've got an assignment for us all, right? How do we envision that we can reach these ambitious and achievable futures. So what is our moonshot for these futures?
Well, I'm here to speak for the trees, and one of the moonshots that we need to accomplish is activating nature, because nature is about 20% of all of the solutions for reaching a net zero decarbonized future. And that means that we've got to activate toward a nature positive vision. And I bet each one of you has got one right now from that terrific exercise. So mobilizing toward a moonshot where for trees and forests in this country would be 10% of the solution. And that means about 150 million acres of more forest, protecting and restoring the forests that we have. And we can do it. We know that we've seen it happen in the past. Where I live in New York was once 80% forest, and around 1900 it was 20% forest. And today in 2025, it's 80% forest again. Forests can come back. Forests can be a huge part of the solution. We just have to help them so that they can help us.
That's awesome. And I just have a quick follow-up to that, and then we're going to come to some of our other panelists. But what does media and storytelling have to do with any of that? What's the role that storytelling can play in that future?
It's doing what we just did, is helping people see in their mind's eye that that future is possible, that it's something that is so compelling. It's way more compelling than living on a space station or living in the zombie apocalypse. It's the future we actually want, and we can do it. So it's about showing people plausible, feasible, and totally doable futures.
Awesome. So speaking of those futures, Billy, you do a lot of work with biomimicry and nature-based solutions. What can humans learn from nature in our design and our communities and in the way that we're facing the challenges of climate change?
So the beautiful thing about the natural world is it shares this world with us. So a lot of the challenges that our buildings and our cities and our technology have to endure as a part of being on this planet is the same things that a lot of these organisms who have been around a lot longer have already solved, have already created solutions for within their biology. So really the question is, what do we want to learn, I think, and what is the organism or collection of organisms or a collection of ecosystems that can teach us what the solution is, because they essentially have this biological experience that is waiting for us to tap into this living library that exists in the natural world of all of these different innovations and types of innovations that we can use.
That's so cool. I love the idea of a living library all around us, that like the information is already there right in front of us. I do want to ask you about the first part of your title. So Astrobiofuturist may be one of the coolest, other than like celebrity forager, maybe one of the coolest job titles I've ever heard. So as an astrobiofuturist, how do you see space exploration as like being a parallel to some of these opportunities for sustainable design?
So the thing that excites me about using biomimicry and applying it to space exploration is if you look at, things like natural selection and how, different organisms have evolved and created these new adaptations over time. The conditions for them to change and come up with these solutions in their biology is very similar to the forces in space exploration that we have to come up with in order to further pursue the stars. So with space exploration, it costs a lot of money, a lot of resources to get things out of orbit and into space. So all of the things that you create have to be multifunctional. They have to be resource efficient. You have to find ways to have systems that are life-sustaining. So there's this really fun and exciting parallel between how we can further look at nature as a way to innovate against these same kind of challenges that we're going to have as people push further and further out into the stars.
Very cool, very cool. And probably a lot of those things that apply to space also apply to living on a planet in peril.
Absolutely. So the most expensive and complex machine ever built by humanity is what? Does anybody know? The International Space Station.
ISS. Okay, yeah.
Yes, the ISS. So the ISS in and of itself is a mimicked version of the conditions conducive to living on this planet, right? So the air that is pumped through that system is, matched to the oxygen ratios of argon and, oxygen, all these other things that are in the air. That it has these cyclical systems of recycling, waste and all of that. So even as we are trying to innovate this far off future, it's still based on us taking Earth with us in some nature or fashion.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I love this conversation. All right, so Jeff, so the wild robot, we all sobbed, but the thing that I loved in this movie was like looking for those nature-based solutions and like all the climate solution Easter eggs. So I want to know what the environmental philosophies or concepts that influenced your approach to building that world and producing the wild robot were.
Well, first off, we have to give credit to the author of the book upon which we're based, Peter Brown. And he is an amazing person, a very thoughtful creator, and really researched a lot of these subjects in preparation for writing the first book, upon which we're just kind of standing on his shoulders to kind of carry that same idea forward. And what was remarkable about what he did in the books was he projected the story into the future at an unspecified date. So we don't know when this is. It could be in a decade, it could be in 1,000 years, we don't know. But what was very clear and what was kind of doled out in small doses throughout the book was hints that this was not the world we know it to be today. Things have changed, sometimes dramatically, from what we know. And he did that intentionally without kind of explaining outright what had happened, but he wanted to indicate for children, this is the future they're going to inherit. He wants them to start asking questions about these things, understanding the ramifications of certain choices, and understanding that they have a part to play in trying to prevent some of the things that are depicted in the story. So that was really kind of a refreshing take on it, because it wasn't being overly preachy or anything, but nonetheless it's there, and it forces you to face it and deal with it. And so most of this film, as is true with the first book, takes place on a remote island that is all nature. But occasionally we get off the island and see glimpses of what the rest of the world is like. And so we had very little screen time in which to do that. And when we did, we purposely chose to make a big statement. In the book, there's an indication when there's a flock of geese traveling that they notice things underneath the water which are unrecognizable to them, but in the description to us as the reader or as the viewer, you understand that they're buildings, like cities are submerged under the water. And so when we portrayed that moment on screen, we knew, again, we had a very brief window in which to do it, but we wanted to make it really have an impact. And so we chose the Golden Gate Bridge and put that underwater so that you can instantly tell, okay, the world has changed. And to further, put an exclamation point on that, we have whales swimming over the top of the bridge. So again, it's very, very extreme, but something we wanted to just really get people's attention to understand the fate of the world in this future version that Peter had written out.
I rewound that moment at least 3 times and was like, those are whales. That's the Golden Gate Bridge. It was such a like, in just 1 or 2 seconds of visual storytelling, it was such an enormous impact in the building of that world. So that was really cool. I do want to know, in the movie, there are all these hints at like technologies that are centered around nature-based solutions. So are there any of those that you can share with us, real world nature-based solutions and technologies that were influenced in that world? Like I'm thinking about the AI animal language learning moment. Yeah. Any ones that stick out to you?
Again, I mean, we're leaning a lot on what Peter had kind of set up in the books, and he, also forecasted that AI is going to be something that the future generations are going to have to be dealing with as well, and that's why he centered this around a piece of AI, a robot that because of its conditions and its circumstances has to exceed its programming and become something more by learning from the nature that's around it. And so that was something that in the book Peter had the liberty of taking quite a lot of time drawing out, but in the film we had to kind of condense it down. again, for screen time to get into the main relationship with the film, which is Roz and this gosling that she winds up having to care for and become a parent to. And watching, having Roz watch, just park herself for a long period of time and just have nature happen around her, watch the interaction of the animals, watch their movements, watch the repetition of their behaviors, so that she is taking all of this in and cataloging all of it so that she can then try to form a way to communicate back to them. And something else that was interesting, again, this is also in the book as well, and again, one of the inspirations for Peter in writing it was finding a correlation between animal instincts and computer programming. They both come with some preset, preloaded information that they then draw upon and use for their behavior and the way that they move through the world. And that's a connection we make throughout the film, and Roz makes throughout the film, to kind of understand the similarities and the differences between her and her surroundings, and also gives her a way in to help entice them to form a community and overcome some of their instincts of combating each other or chasing each other, eating each other, to help each other in dire times, as is depicted in the film, to kind of create something even better. And that universal message of community was something that we all felt really powerful about, and kind of is this great hope that there could be a balance between nature and technology, and something that could help save us all.
That's really cool. Now, Alexis, I want to come to you. I obviously have been a huge fan for a really long time.
Oh my God, thank you.
But we have this fabulous vegan food provided here at the summit. But food is an enormous piece of the puzzle when it comes to climate solutions.
Absolutely.
But it's also something that intersects with culture and like the human experience of enjoying our lives. So I want to know about food as like an on-road to your personal connection to the natural world. As we become, more and more disconnected from our food systems, what inspired you to start making content centered around food and foraging?
Honestly, what brought the want to the front of my brain was watching the way that our food systems very rapidly broke down at the onset of the COVID pandemic. Watching how anxious a lot of people suddenly became, and watching so many people learn in real time how we cannot take a lot of these very fragile systems for granted, hurt my heart as a person who is focused on a lot of these systems for a large portion of my life. It was kind of supposed to stay a thing that like scientists and people who are in charge of getting food to people to focus on, so everyone else doesn't have to think about it. And I remember coming across just video after video, scrolling on TikTok because we had nothing else to do, seeing people just freaking out about the idea of even going into the grocery store. And so the first long form foraging video that I made, after just like running a blog for myself to keep track of my recipes for years before that, was, hey, here are like 5 extraordinarily common weeds that you can find across most of North America. So maybe if you were freaking out about, say, trying to get a box of spinach, that was probably gonna rot in the back of your fridge anyway, let's be real. Instead, why don't you just go for a walk around your neighborhood, get some steps in so you maybe feel a little less anxious, get some sunlight, get some fresh air, and take a closer look at the space in which you're living, regardless of whether it's urban, suburban, or rural, and maybe make some connections with some organisms, some plants, or maybe even some animals that you see that you wouldn't have had a connection with before. If there's one thing that is actually, like accidentally in my case, because I just think it's fun, good for the planet, it is having 0 carbon footprint, unless you count your own footprints, walking to go get it for your food. And so suddenly, all at once, a lot of people started flooding into my pages, both people coming at it from just wanting a food experience that they got to take part in more, because we are so disconnected from our food systems. I replied to a video last year of a young woman living here in LA who didn't know if the lemons growing on the tree in front of her house were dangerous because they were growing on the tree in front of her house and not in a grove with other lemons. And a lot of people, like myself included, at the jump, laugh and are like, oh my God, how can people be so clueless? But then I really took a second to sit with it and realized it was a really earnest question. She wasn't asking it for the ha-has. Yeah. This is someone who has never had to contemplate where the lemons at the grocery store are coming from before. And when you get to play such a big role in the food that you and your loved ones are consuming, you make smarter choices about what it is you're eating, you lessen the carbon footprint of what it is you're putting on your plate, and in getting to discover a source of abundance in your own backyard, another great added effect is people tend to take better care of the spaces that they are living in. Everyone always thinks that I live in a toadstool cottage in the middle of the forest. But I live in downtown Columbus, Ohio. I can see the center of downtown from my front porch. And a lot of my neighbors, kids who live on my street, will come and ask me, why did you choose to live here when you could be somewhere else where nature is the way the question usually gets phrased. And a lot of times I'll say, hey, let's go for a walk this evening. And I will show you that nature is right here in the center of the city. People think of us as so divorced from nature. There's human world and there's nature world. When I think if you help people realize that all of it is one and the same, they start treating it all as one and the same. And food just ends up being a really great way to do that because we, not to quote rallies, but you gotta eat.
Yeah. Yes, that's so fantastic. And I think that for me, one of the things that stands out about your content always is the joyfulness and the playfulness and just how much fun it looks like you're having.
We have a good time.
Yeah. So how have you seen that joy inspire your audience? Have you heard any specific feedback of I went out and did this and it was so fun and I can't wait to do it more? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my favorite thing in the world. In fact, I actually think I just reposted on Blue Sky yesterday because I forget Blue Sky exists until I'm stuck at the airport, like everybody else. Someone who said they saw a video of mine 3 years ago about making color-changing violet lemonade with their kids. And since then, it has become a yearly tradition that they kind of use to ring in spring with their children. It's become something that they have formed joyful memories around and that they now hope their kids will introduce to their friends and maybe some ways down the future, even possibly to their own children and their own families. And oh my gosh, if you want to see me go from 0 to weeping in under 60 seconds, anytime someone shares with me that their family has formed a new celebratory ritual because of one of my videos, it really hits home because we all used to have them. Everyone, I tell people when they're like, oh, this was so fun, I can't believe it. Everyone's descended from foragers. You are here because somewhere in your lineage, if you go far back enough, was in tune with what was in season and when, and they went out and they got it and they prepared it or preserved it in a way to be able to stay alive so you can be here right now. I do think that to a certain extent, that connection to your surroundings is kind of embedded in our DNA. And so I think it feels joyful to reconnect with that part of yourself and to realize that you are just a small puzzle piece in this entire giant 3D puzzle that is the universe we're living in. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming, but usually it just makes me feel really happy, like I'm never alone.
Ugh, I love that. Man, I'm gonna be crying more than I did during the Wild Robot. So I wanna bring this back and have a question that we're all gonna answer. So what is the nature-based solution or idea that you're most excited about or inspired by when you think about all of the possible futures that lie ahead of us? And I'll start. I'm gonna actually toss it down. Oh, all right. I'll start with Alexis because I feel like you're like ready to go.
So if anyone who's been following me for more than a year knows that my hyperfixation is always seaweed. I don't think you can call it a hyperfixation anymore if it lasts like an extended period of time. It might just be a full-blown obsession.
All right.
But the advent of seaweed farming, how much carbon can be sequestered, especially in the farming of kelp and the reintroduction of kelp species on both coasts. I've gotten to watch in real time, like giant kelp returning to the California coastlines. And I've got to see in real time sugar kelp kind of taking off as a food source on the Atlantic coast where my family is from. I gently threaten my followers with this all the time, but every time I have a bad day, I'm like, that's it. I'm putting my phone in a hole, I'm buying a boat, and I'm becoming a seaweed farmer. I'm ready to fade into the lore of the back of people's memories. I'm ready to be the weird woman on the cul-de-sac that the kids are worried is a witch. I'm ready to just be growing my seaweed. I'm ready to be seeding my kelp lines every fall and going out in March and gathering it all, putting some of it in the garden, eating some of it, leaving some of it to grow and then feed the other organisms that need it. It's gonna be interesting though, because I think seaweed has a bit of a marketing problem. Seaweed, girl, call me. That was my whole life before I ate plants off the ground professionally. They called me the spin master. I can help. But just seeing the inspiration that some food companies have taken, bringing seaweed to the forefront, making things like kelp veggie patties, and even now seeing seaweed-based threads being used for garments now. My birthday present from my best friend was a class in New Jersey about extracting sodium alginate from seaweed and making your own thread that you can then knit with, and I've never been more excited. If I disappear after that class, y'all know where to find me, the sea.
All right. So I think we all can later tonight have a toast to seaweed. What about you, Jeff? What is your climate, or nature-based climate solution that's really got you wound up?
I mean, I'm gonna stick to something thematic in the film, which is how we can better understand nature so that we can have more of a dialogue with that side of ourselves and find ways to integrate nature more into our world than we already are.
That's a great one. Conversation with the nature. What about you, Billy?
That is actually mine.
Oh!
Wow.
So I want to give it a little bit of context. So when you were talking about foraging being something that is inherent to us, this idea of turning to nature for solutions is an ancestral and indigenous practice, right? Nature was our first teacher.
Yes.
So the idea of, yeah, you can clap for that. I heard some clapping here.
First teacher, yes.
So the idea of using technology to enhance our connection to each other and to nature, and the idea that right now there's a lot of efforts around giving rivers legal rights, right, and personhood to a degree. So the idea of extending that into the future and potentially living in a world where there is a UN representative that is a whale that can share their knowledge and insights that we can translate and understand and have this deeper connection, that's a very exciting, that's the kind of biomimetic technology that I'm very excited about.
Because that's the thing. People are using AI to try to decode whale song. That's like a real thing. Wow.
I want to be an aide for a UN whale.
Yeah.
One, I bet the suits would be so fly, and I'd get to be in the ocean all the time.
What about you, Sacha? What's a nature-based solution that is really exciting?
Well, I already spilled the beans. I'm in on trees and forests, and I like the. I mean, a kelp those are forests too,
Yeah,
right?
forest, undersea
Kelp,
forest, exactly.
So
It counts.
We're on right here. And, I mean, the basic math of the climate system at this point tells us that we have to take about 100 to 1,000 gigatons of carbon out of the atmosphere by the end of the century. Well, I was going to say it's a ton of carbon. It's actually about 1,000 billion tons of carbon. And the only technology we have to do that right now is the ancient one of photosynthesis. The only scalable solution that we have at our disposal right now that is also one that gives us all kinds of stuff in return, as opposed to sucking it out with giant machines and paying somebody to grab it out of the air and stick it somewhere on a unit basis. We would get verdant cities that are livable and cooler and greener and more beautiful, and would give us all of the health benefits that tree equity cities would give us, right? We would be able to have forest products from this hundreds of millions of acres of new forest. Like, they're making glass out of wood now. They're making plastic replacements that are biodegradable. They're making rigid foam kind of insulation panels out of wood now. So the innovation agenda that comes with it also is this huge driver of potential. So I'm all in for that. We need to plant trillions of trees, actually, over the next many decades. But we did it once. Like in the Dust Bowl here in the U.S., we planted 4 billion trees in a few years in order to deal with the blowing soils in the Midwest. We can mobilize. That was a very local one, but we can mobilize. Imagine if everybody felt empowered to be planting these trees in cities and have a sense of ownership and connection and agency to actually do something about this existential problem, and then care for those trees and care for those forests and have that sort of relationship grow over time. That's the nature positive kind of future that I think trees and forests can give us.
You are the Lorax.
Yeah, we got the Lorax up here. We got our wonderful sea captain. This is fantastic. So, I mean, these are all exciting solutions. And I think when we were prepping for this panel, you said, Sacha, that the climate solutions we need already exist, but it's just about building the willpower and the motivation and this like concept that it is possible if we just work towards it together. So it's just about, building that momentum. What role does storytelling have to play in all of this? Billy, I think you do a lot of like imagining these incredible futures. How do you see storytelling coming into play?
So I think, so we can all, hopefully, we can all read the words that are up there, right? The reason why I'm pointing to the letters is because letters are actually symbols, right? Symbols are visual representations of ideas, right? So those are symbols that put together to form a larger idea in your mind. So when we tell stories, as we are up here talking and telling these stories, there's also some, neural transfer and connection that allows us to align in a certain neurological way. So when we tell stories, those are the things that allow people to think in an abstract way about a problem that they can't necessarily see from a different angle. So the more that we tell stories, the more that we connect to each other, and the more we help people imagine and understand and empathize with a point of view that they don't particularly hold right now. And as the world is in the way that the world is right now, the more stories that we tell, the more authentic and vulnerable we are, the deeper the connection. So this is actually the moment in time where we need to be as vulnerable as possible in our storytelling to make the deep connections that are needed to break through the noise.
Yeah. So I want to follow that thread because I mentioned I have a young kiddo, and our preschool teacher the other day was like, empathy is a skill that you learn. It's something that you learn, and the way you teach it is through books and stories. So Jeff, you've been producing children's media for your entire career. What do you feel about storytelling as a crucial medium for particularly bringing environmental themes front and center for children?
I mean, it's so vital, and you know, when you're creating media for children, you're creating something that has the potential to live on for generations, right? Yeah, it's not just for this one single moment in time. And so I think all of us that are storytellers have this responsibility to be aware of the timeless power of the stories that we're telling, and how they can affect not just a single generation, but can have meaningful impact across many, many years, and can basically provide kids with a worldview that's more well-rounded, showing them things that they're not getting to see otherwise, or points of view that they might not be yet exposed to, or putting them in someone else's shoes to help them consider what that might be like. All of these things are vital for us to kind of weave into the types of stories that we tell. But it's that timeless piece of it that I think is so attractive to us, is that it really can live on past all of us.
Awesome. Yeah. And thinking about stories, you know, obviously stories have a strong relationship to the creation of culture and the shifting of culture. And in climate work, we talk all the time about shifting culture. So Alexis, I want to know from you how your experience with foraging in nature is connected to and rooted to culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a bit of what I alluded to before is that, you know, everyone descends from someone who had a deep connection with the place in which they live. And a lot of what has been really beautiful and getting the opportunity to dive deeper into my foraging practice is feeling like I am fostering a connection with a lot of ancestors that I may not have otherwise gotten to feel connected to. Like many Black Americans in the United States, for I don't know, a silly reason that I definitely don't know. I can't trace my dad's family before the 1870 census. Crazy.
Talk about it.
Crazy. It's almost like they weren't considered people before that. But what I do know is where they lived. What I do know are some of the stories passed down from my grandparents and great-grandparents. And honestly, what a lot of those centered around were food, and wild foods almost always end up being a part of that. And one thing that I think is so beautiful about the community around foraging is we really do get to take turns appreciating so many different global cultures. The first time that I ever went to gather ginkgo nuts off of the ground in New York City, everyone else who was there gathering with me were aunties of like East Asian and Southern Asian descent, and getting to talk to them about their lived experiences with this food, getting to talk to them about the way that they grew up having this prepared, I mean, honestly gives you like a whole nother level of love and of appreciation for them, for their culture, for the plant, for it being here, for getting to be nourished by it. A large portion of, I think, you know, what is missing from Western culture is this loving connection with our surroundings, is, you know, knowing the name of that cooing bird outside of your window during the summertime, knowing about when the monarch butterflies return to your area of the country. There's this calendar of beauty that we've been so tapped out of for a couple generations now, and I think getting to appreciate it, and now living in such a globalized society, getting to appreciate it from so many different angles, I think that's the kind of like America melting pot culture I want to see us moving towards.
Yes, yes. Calendar of beauty. That's such a gorgeous phrase. Well, we are almost out of time, but I don't want to pass up the opportunity, since I am sitting on stage with the Lorax. I feel like it would be such a missed opportunity if I didn't ask you about the Forest Congress. So the Forest Congress is coming up, and I want to know if you can share a little bit with us about the significance of the Forest Congress and the multidisciplinary approach that you feel is needed for conservation efforts.
Yeah, thanks. So next month in DC, a whole set of organizations that focus on forests and environment and resilience are co-hosting the 9th American Forest Congress. And there have been 9 of these things since 1882. So every few decades, the people who care about forests get together. It's sort of like the Ents, right? The Ents come back together. And think about how to deal with the new challenge that has arisen since the last Congress. And obviously, we're living in a different context. And I think we all need to lean in on trees and forests, but we also just need to lean in on creating momentum toward a future that actually is the one that we want. And coming back to your last question, stories are tell us how to live, and I think we have to tell ourselves a new story about how to live with and around trees and forests, right? And I don't have to tell anyone here in LA that we're in a different time for forests and trees, and we need to lean into a new paradigm for taking care of them so that they can take care of us. So this Congress is going to bring together hundreds of the world's Ents or tree carers and experts and campaigners and activists and scientists and to plot out a whole set of ideas about what the future of forests need to be and can be, and then take that set of resolutions. It functions like a Congress. There'll be a gavel, and we'll develop a set of resolutions, and that's like the roadmap for forests for this country for the next few decades. So if you're interested in forests, if you care about forests, if you depend on forests, and that pretty much covers everybody here, come to DC next month and be part of mapping out the solution, because you have information that the trees need.
Awesome. Woo. We are almost out of time, and so I want to real quickly just from each of you here, we've talked a lot about nature-based solutions and about storytelling. How do you see us solving the climate crisis by flipping the script on the stories we tell and making it a story of human ambition? What is your thing that you want this audience to walk away with in the story you're telling here today? And I can start here with you, Alexis.
I mean, I hope what my storytelling always does is inspire people to take a more active role in their surroundings and to encourage people to do more right where they are. Sometimes I think people think you have to volunteer somewhere far away and plant like 1 million oak saplings in a state you don't live in. That being said, you guys need more oaks here. Why do you have so many eucalyptus trees? They're giant matches. I get very nervous walking by them. Your coast live oaks are amazing. I don't know why I have to look so hard to find them. But like getting people as excited as you guys are about coast live oaks, like showing people the beautiful aspects, all of the different species that rely on all of these different plants. And when people learn their stories, they want to invite those things into their surroundings much more often. We're, in my neighborhood, very slowly spreading the good word of the pollinator garden. We live right where Appalachia ends and the Great Plains starts, which in my opinion means we have a lot of really cool plants and trees that we can be planting in central Ohio. And so getting to tell people like, oh, the sweet gum tree is amazing. You know who loves those? Luna moths. And people are like, oh my God, I had no idea. I've seen those before. They're beautiful. I haven't seen one since I was a kid. And suddenly there's a little piece of solving the climate crisis that person is like running to, put their piece into the puzzle. So storytelling, I think, really helps people find a piece that doesn't feel so hard and scary for them to get to put into that big old puzzle.
Awesome. What about you, Jeff? What do you want people to walk away with today?
I think hope, more than anything, and that's as storytellers, that's the thing we're trying to push for all the time, is to instill people with things are not always great. We live in times that are turbulent, but there's always hope, and there's an ability inside each of us to, and again, I'm going to quote the movie, we can overcome our instincts, overcome our programming to become something more. And it's through kind of erasing the things that make us different and finding the things that are common and forming those communities is going to help us achieve great things. So hope is kind of the message we're trying to push for.
Awesome. What about you, Billy?
One of the first things that oppressors try to take from you is your capacity to dream. So in this moment, you first have to believe it's possible. Next, ground yourself in whatever you're feeling and think about the aspirational solution that would solve or salve that feeling. And then find the first thing in your immediate area that's closest to that solution and just keep nurturing that small version of that aspirational future. Climate change is an aggregated challenge. It's a whole bunch of small things. The solution is an aggregated compounding of small solutions that compound into these futures, right, more than one, that we want to inhabit. So first, reclaim your capacity for dreaming. Take time, 5 minutes, 3 times a day to dream aspirationally. And then find where a piece of that dream lives in whatever work you're doing today. And it will compound into these larger futures that we will eventually live in, because it's still all possible.
Amazing. Yes. Sacha, final thought?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're living in a time where people have enormous doubts about what the future could or might hold for us, and they're looking for a way forward. And stories can sort of help us with that imagining. The future never looks like the present, but now we know for sure that the future is going to look significantly different. But we kind of, like, for those of us who are working on change, that's what we were working on before climate change arrived on the scene, right? So we have a chance to say, what is the future going to be? What do we want to take with us that we care about so much right now? That is the heart of our current story, and embedded in the future story. And storytelling is going to show the way for people to imagine a future that they find so compelling that they want it now. And if they feel drawn that way, we will help them move through time to a place that is very risky right now. And we're here to help de-risk that journey. That's what stories can help us do.
Amazing. Yeah. So speaking about moving through time, I think we're going to have Billy close us out. At the beginning, we all imagined these beautiful places that we love so much and picture them 120 years in the future. So Billy, if you want to lead us through what the next right steps feel like.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of fun and quirky. So it's basically what I just said. So world building, this idea of building futures or building worlds, is really centered around taking some abstract occurrence or abstract phenomenon and making it commonplace in the everyday, right? So, for example, in a world where we have a whale UN ambassador, what can happen when, right? And you just want to take a minute, think about what that aspirational phenomenon is, right? This is, when you're on your phone or as you're writing stuff down. What is an abstract, abnormal thing that you would like to normalize in some world or reality? Start there, okay? Just take a minute and think about it. How much time do we have? Like 2 minutes?
Like 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. We're going to speed through that. All right. Now that you've done that,
Wow.
Now that you have that, right, that's where in a world where alien robots turn into, right, it's the same premise, right? Take that thing, make it normalized, and then ask yourself, what can happen in a world where this thing is normal? And then answer that. And then the fun part in this 2-minute version is think of a character from your favorite world or game or story. Now put them in that world. And as a what can I do right now? Think of the story of that character is in, but put that story in this world that you just dreamt up. And that can give you a foundation to start dreaming bigger because you have some familiar story that you're adding a new twist on. So for me, it's like taking Friday and then Friday the movie with, Ice Cube and Chris Tucker and, putting Compton in the middle of a forest, right? Like what happens, how does that story change? How is that story different when the world is, what happens in the world of Friday where there is a UN or a president that's a whale? And, you got Smokey trying to figure out, anyway. So as an exercise, ask yourself these questions. What can happen when this thing is normalized? Because that's also the work that we're trying to do. We're trying to normalize these habits and these technologies as solutions to the things that we are up against. So just practice that and you will see this world grow. And then start to just try to name 5 trees in your neighborhood.
That's always a great one. Just 5 different, any species in your neighborhood, and suddenly, boom, your world's gotten bigger, your world's gotten more vibrant. You want to take better care of it. It's inspirational. It really is. Also, Smokey the Bear was a real bear. People would be way safer in the woods. I don't want to have to report back to him for a gender reveal that needed fireworks for some reason.
All right, I think that's a great note to go out on. Let's get a big round of applause for all of our panelists. And let's hear it for seaweed and trees. Seaweed and trees. Seaweed and trees. All right.